Good morning, everyone, to our webinar on for electrical and computer engineering on how to make an effective application for a master and PhD. I'd like to introduce the panelist. So Jared Rank, he is the acting manager for engineering grad studies in electrical and computer engineering. I'm Rita Chikuski. I'm the manager of graduate operations in the Faculty of Engineering. And Maria Sandoval, she's a panelist in the background. She's the marketing. She's waving to you now. She's marketing and recruitment specialist from the Engineering Graduate Studies Office in the Faculty of Engineering. So today, it's not going to be very long. What you will learn today is about the programs, admission requirements, and the deadlines to apply, what makes a good application, how to find a supervisor, and funding and awards. These will all be brief points. We're not going to go into great detail, but it's enough to get you going in terms of how to make a good application. Pitching point on why you might want to apply to the University of Waterloo Faculty of Engineering. We're a leader in industry connections. We have our faculty are not only involved in research here at the University of Waterloo, but they have a lot of connections outside of the university which benefit our students when they're doing research. We have top labs, institutes, and centers, which is another leading point, so students can do very good research with the faculty members because of the facilities that are available here. We're a top-ranked engineering school in Canada and worldwide. And students also have a variety of clubs and associations that they can enjoy while they're here at the University of Waterloo. So it's not just about research, it's not just about the grades, it's not about what you can do as a student, but there's also the life balance that you can get here at the University of Waterloo. And the other thing that we would like to really stress is the fact that if you have an idea and it's your idea, the University of Waterloo maintains that it is your idea. It's 100% of the ideas that are developed at Waterloo belong to the creator. So it doesn't belong to your research supervisor. It doesn't belong to the University of Waterloo. It belongs to you. So that we believe is a strong selling point to students who are coming here so that they know if they develop something, it's their IP property. It doesn't belong to anybody else. So now I'm going to head it off to Jared. Jared is, like I said, he is the acting manager for ECE, and he will talk more about the actual program itself.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're happy to have all of you here with us. So why graduate studies in electrical and computer engineering? Well, graduate studies in electrical and computer engineering is a great way to advance your engineering career. We have 14 different areas of specialization in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. So it's a very wide area in which you can study. You're able to study with a research professor here, and you can create and work on some very interesting research projects in a very wide area. Basically, the purpose of graduate studies is to strengthen and expand the breadth and the depth of your knowledge that you gain through your undergraduate program. And essentially, you're going to attain some specialized knowledge and skills and tools, which you'll be able to apply in industry or, if you wish, further in academic studies. So the first thing, obviously, you need to do is define the program that you want to apply to. We have several programs available in electrical and computer engineering. So we have a Master's of Engineering, which is a course-based program. During that program, you're going to have to complete 8 courses. And there are some courses that you can do to help develop your research, leadership skills, etc. Generally, people who pursue the Masters of Engineering are interested in moving to industry after they complete their degree. That's not always the case, but generally that's the path that people take. We do offer 8 different specializations in the Masters of Engineering program. And generally the program takes 1 to 1.5 years to do. One big thing to note for the MEng program is that it is a self-funded program. There's no funding from the department, the university, or the faculty. And there is a co-op opportunity available through for our MEng program, but you would require a separate application as it is a separate program and they're considered separately. The co-op program is relatively new, so at this time there is very limited availability, but with the success of that program, we anticipate it will grow. We also have the Masters of Applied Science. It requires you to complete 5 courses and then do a research-based thesis, which you would complete in conjunction with your advisor. This program is designed for those who want to further develop their research skills and possibly interested in pursuing a PhD afterwards or a career in engineering research. The program is 2 years in duration. You would have a GRS, which would be supplied by the supervisor. And we also do have some collaborative programs available, which I'll kind of touch on at a later point. We also have the Doctor of Philosophy program. So it's 4 courses that are required, 4 years in duration, unless you do a direct entry program, which is also available for exceptional master's students. That would be 5 years in duration. Basically, again, this is for those who either have a master's already or are directly entering, who want to further their research skills. And usually after you complete a PhD, a lot of people stay in academia, but there are also research opportunities in industry or in government that you could join afterwards. So the program's generally 4 years, unless it's direct entry, it's 5, and you would also receive funding from a supervisor for your PhD. So as I alluded to, there are a few collaborative programs in nanotechnology and quantum information. And there are also some MH co-op programs. So these are the links here to see all of our programs. I think Maria has just made them available in the chat. So one thing to note, if you apply to the MH co-op program and you're not accepted to the co-op program, you may be given the option for regular MH. That's not a guarantee, but it's something that we do consider. So keep that in mind if you apply to co-op. Possibly you might not get co-op, but we may offer you a position in the regular MH program. If you start as an MH student and you're doing well in your MH program, it is possible to transfer to the Masters of Applied Science, but it would require you to reach an agreement with one of our professors to take you on as a supervisor. So it is possible. You can also transfer from a Masters of Applied Science to a PhD program if during the duration of your master's program you are very successful. Again, you can find a supervisor who wants to take you on, or possibly your current supervisor may want to transfer you to a PhD if they feel you're a very strong candidate. And as I mentioned before too, for exceptional students, there is the pathway to a direct entry PhD, and you could apply to that when you submit an application. So the next thing you want to do is review the admission requirements and the deadlines very carefully. So the requirements for our master's programs, you need to have an honors bachelor degree with a minimum of 75% for master's students, or 80 for the PhD program. The international equivalents are also available, but that is something you can find on the university website. For each country, it will list the equivalent to the 75 at the University of Waterloo. Just keep in mind that those equivalents are for master's programs and not for the PhD programs. So if you do have questions about that, you can contact our admissions coordinator and they can help clarify that. We also require a supplemental information form. We require 2 references for the master's programs, 3 for the PhD programs. For the master's, you must include 1 academic reference. For the PhD, you must include 2 academic references. And one thing to note about those references is an academic reference must come from a former professor who directly taught you a course or supervised your research work. In past, we've seen applicants who will have a fellow student or perhaps a postdoc fellow submit a reference, and those would not be accepted. So it's very important that you submit the proper references, otherwise it can delay your application. The other thing to keep in mind for professional references, your professional reference must have been your direct supervisor or direct manager during your work. And again, the same thing applies. Sometimes we have colleagues who submit references on the behalf of the applicant, and those wouldn't be accepted. And again, it would just delay your admissions process. So please keep those things in mind. We also require ELP, English language proficiency tests. If you have not met one of the exemption criteria, those are also listed on the university webpage. So it's important that you review those before you apply to make sure you don't require an ELP test, or if you do. And we do not utilize or require GRE tests, so you do not need to submit them for an application. And as I mentioned earlier, the international grade equivalencies, you can find them on the webpage, as well as the English language requirements. And there's also a link there to English for Academic Success, which I believe takes you to Redison College, and they have some more information on English programs available there. So for the admissions requirements, we kind of touched on that. The application deadlines, there are 3 intakes. We intake for September, which is the fall term, January, which is the winter term, and May, which is the spring term. So essentially our programs start every 4 months. The application deadline is generally 6 months before the beginning of the term. And please note that you must submit all your required documents in order for your application to be considered. So you need to submit everything by the deadline. If for some reason you're not able to do that and you have not contacted one of the admission coordinators, we will not consider your application. So please keep that in mind. We deal with a very high volume of applications, so it's very important that you have your application completed by the deadline so that we can meet our deadlines of processing applications, getting offers out to students as quickly as possible. So please keep that in mind. For the master's and PhD students, before you apply, you should review the relevant area of specialization that you want to work in and have arranged a supervisor if possible. It's not necessary that you do have a supervisor when you apply, but you need to arrange supervision with a supervisor in order to be admitted. So you can apply, you can list some potential supervisors on the application, but you should take steps to reach a supervision arrangement with a supervisor. You should review our research areas on our webpage, where you can see each of the areas of specialization and the supervisors that work in those areas, and you should reach out to them directly. There's also some other information later in the presentation on how you can contact supervisors. So as you noted, review the specializations for MEng or the research areas for master's and PhD students. So as you can see here, we have 7 areas of specialization in, 8 actually, my apologies, 8 areas of specialization for the MEng program. One thing to note about the areas of specialization in MEng is that you are not guaranteed a specialization in the MEng program. We do our very best to offer as many of the specialization courses as we can throughout the duration of the MEng programs. But because we have a limited number of faculty and we have a limited number of classrooms available, we can only offer so many courses per term. We do our very best when we schedule these courses to make sure that we offer as many of these courses as possible. But you need to be very careful when you plan your coursework in an MEng program to make sure that the courses you are wishing to take for specialization are actually offered. And we do post our courses for future terms well in advance. So it's very important that if you are planning to do an MEng specialization, that you take note of what the proposed courses are for those terms and you plan accordingly, because you may not be able to get the specialization. Of course, we wish for as many students to be able to take it as possible, but just given the constraints, we can't always do it. And then as noted, we have 14 areas of research. You can see all of them listed here. You should go to our website, look at the faculty who work in these areas and reach out to them directly in order to try and reach a supervision agreement with them. You may need to be persistent, and that's one thing that students sometimes may find difficult, is reaching supervisors. Keep in note that our faculty members are very busy. They're doing research, they're teaching courses, they're supervising other students. So if they don't respond to you immediately, don't be discouraged, but be persistent. You know, if you need to send them a second email, you can always try and call them in their office. If you happen to be in Waterloo area and are on campus, it's even okay to show up to their office and knock on the door and ask for a meeting. So it is the responsibility of the student to find a supervisor. So I can't emphasize enough the effort that you should put into this, because this is really one of the keys to being admitted to one of our research programs. And as noted, here's some resources for finding a supervisor. There are several websites that are available, and as well, there's a couple YouTube videos too that can give some hints and tips on how to find a supervisor. As I noted, you don't need a supervisor to apply to the MASC or the PhD program, but you do need to secure supervision in order to be admitted to the program and made an offer. For MEng students, you do not require a supervisor because it is a course-based program, so you don't need to worry about that if you're applying to MEng. And then the next step after you've done this, your homework, you would apply to the program. So here's a screenshot of our webpage and the instructions to apply. Basically, there's instructions to what to do before you apply, how to go through the process to apply, and what you can do after you apply if you have questions about the process. There's also some recordings there with tips for what to do when you're preparing an application for graduate studies. And that basically wraps up the presentation. We will take some questions from people if they have specific questions, but also if you have questions after this presentation, you should reach out to the ECE admissions coordinators, ECE Grad M at U Waterloo. That's a shared mailbox for all the programs. So if you submit your email there, they will get an answer to you. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can now.
So thank you very much, Jared, for your for your presentation. As you can see, there are many things, many steps that you have to follow in order to get that letter of acceptance in the University of Waterloo in the Department of Computer and Electrical Engineering. It's very competitive, so that's why we're doing this. So you get ready and you make a good application. The first question, it comes, is there an option of MASC with co-op?
Currently, no, we don't have any co-op for the Masters of Applied Science or the PhD program. It's possible you could do a research assistantship while you're doing your program, but you would arrange that with one of our lab supervisors here when you're in your program. But we don't have, at this point, a formalized co-op.
Hear more. I finished my master's in the UK. Do I still need ELP to apply for PhD?
No, you would not, because you'd be, well, it depends, I guess, kind of when you finished your degree, but generally, and your, it's kind of a difficult question to answer without a little more information, but the answer I will give is if you've completed a degree in the UK, you would be ELP exempt.
Here I'm sharing also this link where you can find the exceptions when you don't need it. Also, how can I get linked with a supervisor? That's kind of answered already, but if you could please.
Yeah, so I can touch on it again. So as I noted, the best way for you to find a supervisor would be to go to the ECE page, and you can find our programs listed there. And under our programs for information for future students, you will find the areas of specialization. And basically in each area of specialization, you can explore that area further. It lists all the faculty members who work in that area of specialization, and it gives you their contact information. So you can click directly on their name, takes you to their profile page, which talks a little bit about them and also has their contact information. So that's probably the best way to find a supervisor. When you submit your application too, there is an option to put potential supervisors. Yeah, this is the page here, actually. Thanks, Maria.
Oh, yeah.
So there is an option to add potential supervisors. So that's the second interest. It may talk to us about some of their publications, and it generally tells you if they're accepting grad students or not.
Here also, there is no self-funded admission for PhD because your slide shows funded by supervisors.
Correct.
Here also, there is no self-funded admission for PhD because your slide shows funded by supervisors.
Correct. That is correct. There's no self-funded admission.
Can I apply to both MASC and MSc via the same application?
Can I just clarify? The person wrote down Masters of Applied Science and Master of Science. We don't have Master of Science in engineering.
That's right.
I'm not sure if they meant MEng. They corrected themselves afterwards. So it's MEng and Masters of Applied Science.
That's what I thought they meant.
Yeah.
But no, those would be two separate applications. So the MEng program and the MSc program are separate programs. So you would need to submit a separate application to each program to be considered for each separately.
But they can apply to two at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. You can apply to more than one program at once, but you would need a separate application for MEng and MASc.
If a Master of Applied Science and a PhD program are funded by a supervisor, does it mean scholarships like the Vector one doesn't apply?
No, that's not the case. So you have your GRS provided by your supervisor, which is minimum funding, and then you're also eligible to apply for other scholarships, and you may possibly receive those. And you can, in some cases, hold concurrent funding with the GRS and other scholarships as well. So it does not preclude you from applying for scholarships.
Yeah.
And you're actually encouraged to apply for alternate funding. Like, so if you get guaranteed funding from your supervisor, but you are encouraged to actually apply for Vector, NSERC, any other funding that you are eligible to apply for.
I'm sharing here also the page where you can find the minimum funding, and also the awards database where you can find more resources. For MEng application, is the academic reference a must? I have been working for 4 years plus, and I would like to attend a part-time and have a grade. I have been working for 4 years plus, and I would like to attend part-time and have a great GPA from undergrad. Professors don't respond to emails, unfortunately.
Yeah, the academic requirement or reference is a hard requirement. We want to see that as an academic institution. We want to hear from a past supervisor about your academic capabilities. So yes, it's very important that you submit that, and it is a requirement. And
I have been I have been able to contact a supervisor who has agreed to supervise me
Mhm.
if I am successful in my application. Can I go ahead and apply?
Yeah, absolutely. You can apply. Like I said, you can apply without having a supervisor. So if you have somebody who's agreed to admit you, that's even better. So definitely record that person's name as a potential supervisor. Let them know once you've applied, because what they should do then is reach out to us as well. Send an email to the grad office, and then that just makes us aware that you've been in contact with them, they've been in contact with you, and they want to admit you. Obviously, they'll still have to follow the steps to accept your application, but if they give us a heads up, that definitely is helpful and will speed up the process for.
Most of the professors don't reply. Maybe this person means about the supervisors.
Yeah, and that's a common thing that we have. But as I noted, they are quite busy individuals. They're often teaching courses, supervising other students, doing their own research, often attending conferences, writing papers too. So you need to be persistent. That's really the only advice I can give in that category. Email them, try and arrange if you're not in the country, try and arrange a virtual meeting with them. You can call them and leave them a message, but be persistent. And in worst case scenario, you can submit an application before you've talked to somebody, put the potential supervisors down on the application, and then continue to reach out to them. And we'll circulate your application to those supervisors directly too, so that may also help facilitate the start of the conversation with them.
Can bachelor students international apply directly to PhD?
Yes, you can. The minimum academic requirement would be an 83%. And again, the same thing applies. You need to have a supervisor who's willing to take you on. And generally, what they're going to want to see is that you have some previous research experience in your undergrad. Perhaps you did like a research assistant position, or you've done some specific research projects, but they're going to want to see some research experience from an undergrad if you're going to apply directly to a PhD.
Here we have this page that I shared as well, so where you can find the admission requirements to apply. Can you have a supervisor not in ECE?
You would still need to have an ECE supervisor, but you can have a co-supervisor who is from another department. Yes.
When we get admit decision for winter 2024? Like
Sorry,
when we'll get admit decision for winter 2024?
So our timeline to have those decisions sent out is the end of August of this year. That'll be the latest that you get a decision. We try our best. We move through them on a rolling basis. We do get a large volume of applications though, so it does take us a bit of time, but our target is the end of August by the latest.
Can MH students become research assistant, teaching assistant?
No, MN students are not eligible to be teaching assistants.
I already asked this one. Just finished my master. Okay, this person was there. I received my master's degree in China. Is the 80% grade requirement for international students for undergrad or for master's grades?
I would be for your master's program too. I'm assuming this person is going to be applying to a PhD program, so they would need to have an 80 equivalent to 80%.
Requirements. So if this person is applying for PhD, you need 80. Insert live done. And here we have another one. What are the chances of full funded admission in MA in the Master of Applied Science program?
So anybody who applies to a Master's of Applied Sciences and is accepted, you're going to receive minimum funding GRS. The minimum funding currently for master's students does not cover the entire cost of the program, so you are going to have to cover the remainder of the program yourself. But it's possible that you can apply for scholarships and receive other scholarships or awards, and that may bring up the clear the deficit. But you'd have to apply for those other awards and be considered through those processes.
Perfect. Please, I am Solomon Raphael. Can prospective students apply even without securing any potential supervisor for the MA for the Master of Applied Science program?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You do not need a supervisor to apply.
How many students apply to the Master of Applied Science and PhD program each year?
That's kind of difficult to answer because it changes a bit. I'm just going to think a little bit about last year.
Competition is high.
I would say probably for the entire year, we're probably looking at about 1,200 applications between both programs for Masters of Applied Science and PhD.
Do you interview candidates after they submit their PhD applications?
The grad office would not interview you, but potential supervisors may want an interview, and most likely they're going to want an interview with you before they would make you an offer.
Which makes sense.
But that would be coordinated with the accepting supervisor and not our office.
What will be, we have many questions, you see. What will be considered a competitive average for MEng? Is there a start term? Let's just answer this one. What will be considered a competitive average for MEng?
Again, that's kind of a difficult question to answer because it's not always about the academic average. Sometimes it's about other like work experience or things that people have had, and it can, has a lot to do with your profile when you apply. But generally, the high 80s to low 90s is probably going to be somewhere in the area that people are being admitted.
They're looking for the top students. That's how it is. And is there a start term which is less competitive than others?
No, probably not. I mean, we receive the most applications for our fall term, but I mean, we're still very competitive. We have a limited number of spots for every intake, so it's always very competitive.
Will these slides be available to us? You will receive the recording of this webinar after by email. If I apply for the MEng co-op program, do I need to apply again for the MEng non-co-op?
Generally, yes. There are some cases in which you might be offered regular MEng, but that's not a guarantee. So yeah, if you wanted to be considered for both, you would apply for both.
If I apply for MEng co-op program, I'm sorry, I'm repeating the question. Is it advisable to send a reminder email to supervisors?
Yeah, that's certainly helpful. I mean, if you've emailed them and you haven't heard anything from them, then it doesn't hurt to remind them about it. They are busy individuals, so if you can keep yourself on their mind, then that may increase your chances of being admitted.
Those with honor bachelors who are applying directly to PhD, will their application be automatically considered for MASC if they are not selected for PhD?
No, you would need to apply to all the programs for which you wish to be considered.
Is the admission to the Master of Applied Science and MEng done on first come, first served basis?
No, we review every application that we get.
Can you have
really for the Masters of Applied Science program, it's really dependent on finding a supervisor. That's honestly the key for any research program. I can't stress enough. Finding a supervisor is key to being admitted to our programs.
It's the hardest, but it's the key. Some work on that. Can you have a supervisor that is not in the EC faculty? I think this question was solved already.
Yeah, I answered that one already, but I can answer it again. You can have co-supervisors who are external to ECE, but you must have one ECE supervisor.
Here I'm sharing again. Please check this page where how to find a research and supervisor. There are the videos that Jared was mentioning, and visit the ECE page to find the supervisors and pay the areas. I'm going to leave it here. Again, I shared it before, but here it goes again. Does the accelerated Master of Applied Science program have the same requirements?
Yep. Yeah, there's no difference to the academic requirement for the Masters of Applied Science. Or for the accelerated masters, the only difference is that you would need to. There is one extra form that you would need to complete, which you can obtain by contacting our grad office. But other than that, the requirement is the same, because an accelerated masters would require approval at the faculty level before.
How much funding is guaranteed for PhD and Master of Applied Science students? Is it enough to cover living costs and other expenses, excluding tuition fees?
So currently, MASC students are guaranteed $18,000 per year. PhD students are guaranteed $26,000 per year. But no, that would not be enough to cover all your living expenses and all your other expenses. You would need some additional external funding sources in order to do that.
Can you apply for PhD without master's degree, since PhD is mainly research based?
Sorry, was the question, can you apply for a PhD without a master's degree? Was that the question?
Maybe yes, without a master's degree. Maybe that's the question.
We do have a direct entry stream, and yes, you can apply without a master's degree. The minimum academic requirement would be 83% for direct entry PhD students. And they want to see some research experience during your undergrad as well.
If we submit our application early, is there any higher probability of getting admit for fall 2024? That will be one question.
No, we go through, like I said before, we go through all the applications that we receive. So, I mean, the only benefit that you may get is that we review your application earlier. So depends on what program you're talking to as well. That may get you to research supervisors quicker if your application is complete, because we release it. Doesn't guarantee they're going to look at it sooner, but it does guarantee that it's released to the queue in which they can see your application sooner. But it's beneficial for us to process it, and it will make your process go quicker. So yeah, the sooner you can apply with a complete application is better, and we do appreciate that, but it doesn't increase your chance of being admitted.
I see we are also running out of time, but just I see generally in the question they're interested in numbers, like how many students get accepted versus how many apply. Here, for example,
it depends on the term. For research programs, it's very dependent on the needs of the faculty members, because at different times throughout the year, they may have different funding from government agencies. They may be working on different projects. They may have new projects and need new students. They may be coming to the end of a project where they don't need as many students. So it's pretty difficult to actually answer that question, because it really depends on the supervisors and what their needs are for the research programs. For the MEng program, it changes kind of based on term and how many current students we have. Obviously, we have limited resources in terms of space. We have limited resources in terms of teaching. So it just kind of depends on how many students we currently have and how many we can accommodate.
Here, I'm sorry, not to pronounce your name correctly, Pushkar, received BTech honors degree from electronics as communication engineering, gold medal. I'm looking for scholarship options for MS. It must be Master of Applied Science in Electronics and Computer Engineering. You're more than welcome to visit this page and find the options that you might have available.
Yep.
Here. And do PhD students have on-campus student housing?
Yeah, there's campus housing available for students. First-year students generally are given preference, but there is housing available, yes.
I invite you as well. This is the graduate students page. We invite you to visit it. We have this section here where you can find housing, like all these options over here. Oh, here it is, City of Waterloo and housing. It can take you directly to the options that you can find. Here they are. And I am a prospective Ghanaian student. Is second class upper strong enough to get into MASC?
I believe that's the minimum requirement. I'm not looking at the information right now off the top of my head, but I think from Ghana, that is the minimum requirement. So you would be eligible. But again, it would depend on if your profile meets the needs of the prospective supervisor who you are trying to work with.
Just general, also reading a little bit about the questions. Remember, for course-based programs, MN, you don't need a supervisor. Only for research-based programs from MASC, the Master of Applied Science, and of course for a PhD, you need a supervisor. You need to have all the admission requirements. We understand that maybe it's hard to get the academic references, but you need them to apply. I have a bachelor's degree in science education from Ghana. It entails chemistry and biology, but I would like to pursue electrical engineering. Is that possible? And what are my entry requirements?
So the entry requirements would be the same for anybody else. We require a bachelor's degree, a master's of applied science in a relevant background. So often science degrees would be acceptable. I mean, we have in the past, because of research areas like biomedical engineering, we do sometimes see students apply who have backgrounds in a different discipline, and it is possible for them to be admitted. But again, and I cannot stress this, and I've repeated it many times, it really comes down to the requirements of the supervisor with whom you are trying to work. So we do have supervisors in electrical and computer engineering who work with biomedical applications, for instance, and they do often admit students with science backgrounds. So it is possible, but again, the key to any research program is having a supervisor who is willing to work with you and is interested in your profile. So that's really the main point to take away from this.
That it makes sense, right? in your career, that's the idea. I work in a company where my supervisors are connected to academia, but also to industry. And I did research work for them and also now doing industry projects. Will their recommendation letter count as academic or professional? So I would read it again. I work in a company where my supervisors are connected to academia, but also to industry. And I did research work for them and also now doing industry projects. Will the recommendation letter count as academic or professional?
So from what you've described, it sounds like you're talking about your employment supervisors, work in industry, have a connection to academia. They would be considered professional because they're not in academia. You would need, for an academic reference, it has to be a supervisor or a professor at a accredited university who has directly taught you a course or has directly supervised research in an academic environment.
We're trying, like I see sometimes we try, to adapt our situation to the admission requirements, but the admission requirements are like very clear. So it's more like, do you have academic professional references? Do you have the English test? Do you have the GPA? Do you have experience? So that's how you should continue with your application. And finally, it's already 10:45 a.m. Thank you, Jared, for answering all those questions. I just will finish with some of them. What if you don't have any research experience? Can you apply for PhD?
It would be very difficult for you to be accepted as a PhD student if you didn't have any research experience. I'm assuming this person is talking about applying for direct entry. I mean, it's possible if you find the right supervisor and maybe you have done appropriate coursework and have some other experience outside of academics that makes you an attractive candidate to a supervisor, but again, that's a conversation you would have to have with the supervisor. If they can, create a rationale that justifies why you should be a PhD student, it's not impossible, but it is probably going to be unlikely if you don't have past research experience.
Perfect. So we will finish here. And of course, we invite you to visit number one, the academic, there are 3 pages that you really need to see. Number one, of course, is the graduate students page. Here, there is all the information that maybe with some questions that you can solve for future students, for international students, how to find a supervisor, what are the research areas, student life, housing, how is Waterloo, how is the campus. We have more events and info sessions coming. We also encourage you to see them if you want to request more information. So number one page that you need to visit is this one, the graduate page. And of course, if you want to see all the programs for electrical and computer engineering, you have to visit the electrical and computer engineering page. Also, there are many resources over here where you can see all the admission requirements and more information for each of the programs. That will be the 2 main sources of information and the requirements for each of them in the Faculty of Engineering. And here you go to electrical and computer engineering. And here they are. So thank you very much. There are some questions that we were not able to answer, but it's just more of the time that we have available anyways. You will all receive the recording of this session. Please be aware of that email. We're more than happy, of course, to have you here at the University of Waterloo. As Jared and Rita has been explaining, we're looking for very top applicants. So please follow all the steps, all the recommendations that Jared provide to all of you so you can make a very good application. And hopefully, of course, we would love to see you here at the University of Waterloo. Thank you so much, Jared. Thank you so much, Rita, for your time. And thanks, everybody, for your time today. Bye-bye.